Good evening. I'm Penny Martin, and I am delighted to invite you all welcome you all, rather, to Miu Miu Women's Tales. What is that? It is a series of short films that's commissioned biannually by Miu Miu and has been for, I think it's entering its 15th year, which means there are now 29 of these films. Can you believe it? Such commitment to women in film. By directors such as Agnès Varda and Miranda July and Ava DuVernay, and now Joanna Hogg. I'm, of course, hugely privileged to be speaking with Joanna Hogg tonight, director, producer, writer, and in the film that we've just seen, cinematographer, because I think it was done on iPhone 16s, I'm hearing. We'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. Of course, we all know her especially, and she is very beloved for her semi-autobiographical two-part film, The Souvenir of 2019 and 21, starring Tom Burke and Honor Swinton Byrne, which of course was hailed as the English response to Antonioni and Visconti, indeed. She has, and you will all know in her work, established a very unique sensibility, compositional structure, an instantly recognizable style and atmosphere, which she achieves via a very precise approach and attitude to screenwriting, which we'll speak about in a moment. But please, everybody, help me welcome Joanna Hogg to the Miu Miu Women's Tale stage. Okay, Joanna. Every Women's Tales director gets the same provocation from Mrs. Prada, which is to make a short film using the latest Miu Miu collection that explores femininity in its widest sense. Tell me, that's still quite an open brief. How do you start when there are no parameters?
Actually, I don't think I got that full brief, actually.
You fulfilled it.
I hope so. I actually rather like the handbag at the end. I feel I'm not prepared for this because I was sitting in the front row watching the film on a big screen, maybe only for the second time. So it was sort of, I don't know, it struck me in new ways. And then, of course, there's the anxiety of such a big audience seeing it for the first time. But so having this no brief, essentially, is intimidating, obviously, because you can do anything. And so I started to think, well, what am I interested in at this point in time? What might I want to explore? And then I realized, well, really, because I have a genuine love of what Mrs. Prada has been doing over the years, I didn't want to just make a short film of something that I might make anyway. I wanted to sort of, in a way, go to the heart of Miu Miu and do something that was very connected to what Miu Miu was doing, but also at the same time realized that my cinema or my fascinations maybe with character, and I'm often exploring grief in different ways, you know, these more sort of serious subjects, that they weren't, they didn't contradict each other in a way, or if they did, then that was interesting. So yes, it took me a while to land on the handbag.
I'm fascinated by the title. Of course, we think of you when it comes to autobiographical subjects now. I believe it's inspired by two books, almost, two degrees of separation. Is it The Biography of a Handkerchief?
The Autobiography of a Pocket Handkerchief. Written in 1843. So.
By the author of Last of the Mohicans, is that right?
That's right, yes.
Can you say a little bit about how that came about? I saw the book passing hands, and we saw it on the table, of course, in the film.
Well, I'm actually looking straight at the two authors of the book that you see in the film, which is used as a prop as a film. And in fact, Tony Boffey, who's in the audience, made the book before it's been published, because it's not being published until next month. But John David Rhodes and Eleanor Gorfinkel have written a book called The Prop, exploring the role of the prop in cinema. It's a really interesting, fascinating book that I found very inspiring. And in fact, I realized you gave it to me, or you gave me a proof of it in July, so well before I got this commission, in fact. I somehow thought it all coincided, but so the book had already sort of entered my consciousness when I was given this commission, and so it didn't take long to sort of put together the importance of the object in cinema, which is what Eleanor and JD are exploring in the book, with the objects that are important in fashion. Obviously, the handbag, as we all know, is a very important object, a very covetable one sometimes, and for Miu Miu, very important within their collections.
And it also has its own little kind of aperture, the kind of handle through which to see the world, that you made a lot of use of.
Which was one of the reasons I chose that handbag, because of course I had complete freedom as to which of the Miu Miu handbags I could choose. So first it was quite daunting, and then very quickly I honed in on that particular one because, it's got character already because of the leather, the way that it's, even though it's young, even when it's young, it's still got wrinkles, it's still got a personality in a way.
And fashion was, of course, the subject of your graduate film in 1986, starring your school friend, Tilda Swinton. I'm interested to know how important fashion, or at least clothing, is to your films, do you think?
Well, it was certainly important when I made Caprice, and in fact Caprice is about, I'm not going to sort of tell you the story of it, but it's about a young woman who's obsessed with fashion magazines, and she has a fantasy of going inside the magazine that she loves, but discovers a darker side to it. So that was very much reflecting my love of fashion, but also my sort of ambivalence about it, or where it can be a sort of source of anxiety of how you appear and how you think other people see you, and it's fraught with all these kind of anxieties, I guess. So I did something that was very much about these contradictions around fashion. And then fashion has appeared, well, it maybe didn't reappear again in a way until we made the souvenirs. Because that was very much reflecting my, when I made Caprice, in fact. And then there's a version of Caprice within Souvenir Part 2. So, but Caprice, funnily enough, was in my mind when I made this, because this is a very episodic nature, and Caprice is very episodic. And of course, it's, in between, I haven't really looked headlong at fashion. So from Caprice to this, there's definitely a connection.
I mentioned in your introduction that you're known for an instantly recognisable style, and many of the dramatic scenes in your first features, like Unrelated in 2007 and Archipelago, the dramatic scenes are almost spied on from a distance with this locked off fixed viewpoint camera, and I guess people think that's a Joanna Hogg treatment. So in this one we see it handheld from an iPhone. Is this a kind of conscious departure for you?
I don't know how conscious that is, because in fact, when you describe the sort of locked off observational thing,
there is that.
I mean, I know there is that, and when I hear it back, sort of played back to me in a way, I think, oh, I'm not sure. I want to do something different, and maybe the opportunity with Miu Miu, because I was given this open brief, and I saw it as a sort of command to be adventurous, because I think Miu Miu, what Mrs. Prada is doing with Miu Miu is, it's very much her, and it's very personal, but it's very, sort of, doing new things. So I thought, well, I've got to do new things with the film in order to reflect that and sort of meet that. And then I had been having the desire recently of wanting to shoot myself. There's something about when you're a director and you're standing by the cameraman, and he's moving about and he's sort of doing a dance in a way with the camera. And the actors, it's very enviable. You sort of want to be right in there and express yourself in that very direct way. So with this, although at first when I had the idea of shooting it, I was a bit like, well, can I really do it? Can I do it with Miu Miu? Sort of standing there watching me. And would it go really badly wrong? So anyway, I sort of pushed through all of that, and it was really, I have to say, huge fun to do.
You mentioned it's episodic, and there's a lot of genres in it that you might not think are a Joanna Hogg film. You know, there's kind of the abandonment and the heist and the kind of, and maybe there's a murder. Is that our first murder in Miu Miu Women's Tales? I'm not sure. Certainly, but there's a sort of arch tone, and I know you're a huge fan of comedy, and I wonder whether that's something, are there clues in this film to what you might do next?
Yes, actually, talking of comedy, I was surprised. I somehow anticipated that there would be more laughter during the film. In fact, I thought my fear was there would be too much laughter, laughing at places that I didn't think were funny. I didn't hear any laughter at all.
Inside, we were laughing inside, Joanne.
Maybe I just couldn't hear it. Anyway.
So
it was meant to be. I mean, I wanted humour in it. In a 23-minute film, there's only so much you can put in, but I did want a kind of epic quality to it, and I wanted it to be moving, but I also wanted it to be funny. So I had, all these ambitions.
The unusually observant members of the audience will have worked out between your 1986 graduate film and your 2007 debut that there's 20 years before you make your first feature film, during which time you made television. And I just wonder, what was the difference for you, and what do you think films brought you?
Well, it was a huge difference because the work that I did in television, I wasn't writing myself, so I wasn't expressing myself. I didn't feel in any way at all. So and it felt like a bit like I had my hands tied behind my back when I was doing that work. It was very good from an economic point of view, and it's always very flattering when someone offers you work. But I didn't really get full satisfaction from it. So it was it's just a point in time where I thought enough's enough. And then there was a bit of a gap where I thought, okay, maybe the dream of making feature films won't happen. But I sort of reduced my ambitions because I always said when I make my first feature film, I'll shoot it on 35mm. And instead, I shot it on, a camera actually worse than the iPhone 16. I mean, in terms of quality, really, it was like a sort of almost a consumer camera that we shot it on. But it was the only way of getting Unrelated made.
Yeah. I included writer in your introduction, and I wasn't kidding. Before this film, you showed me your treatment, and it was 9 pages long with footnotes and pictures and quite serious detail. Tell us about that. What's it for?
Well, I mean, all my documents, I mean, for a feature film, it's about 30 pages long. So it's, I think it was longer than that, though. Well, I didn't count the pages. But yes, without going into a lot of detail, when I made Unrelated, my first feature film, I did write a full screenplay, and I found it a bit boring to carry it around with me when I was shooting because I was much more interested in being spontaneous and just working directly with my actors or my non-actors in front of me. So it was sort of a kind of cumbersome thing to carry around this 100-page document. I didn't really know how to sort of use it, and I just started encouraging the actors to improvise, and it was just so much more exciting. So then when I came to make my next film and the subsequent films, I cut to the chase and wrote what I thought I would need when I'm shooting. So I was thinking of my need before anyone else's. Obviously I have to deal with producers and everything, but I've sort of managed to get away with it now a few times.
Now, you dodged my question. I asked you, were there any clues about what you might be doing next? Are you prepared to share?
I obviously just didn't hear that. I'm going to do 2 other shorter projects next, because this, it didn't feel like a shorter project, actually. I'm looking at my producer. It was very, it was like doing a feature film, obviously much more compressed in time, but I'm going to do a couple of shorter things, but then I've got a feature film that I've been wanting to make, that actually I was wanting to make before this came along, and I'd been in a bit of a waiting game with it, so I'll go back to that.
Oh, wow.
Very specific.
But a scoop nonetheless. Who do you discuss that strategy with? I gather that the last 4 of your features were co-produced by Martin Scorsese. What does he bring to the table?
Actually, he hasn't seen this yet, and he wants to, though, so I've got to organise for him to see it. But I feel a little bit like I've left him out of this. There hasn't been time, but he's. I can't really say he's become a friend, and he's a wonderful person to have conversations with, not just about cinema, but other things about life. And I find it very. He's a really important touchstone for me in terms of sort of what I'm going to do next. And I'm sure I'll have a discussion with him soon about, you know, should I do this or should I do that? Or before I made the souvenirs, I had this conversation with him, and I had another film that I might have made instead, which I then ended up making afterwards, The Eternal Daughter. But yeah, I don't know. I never had a mentor figure at film school or even at school. So I don't even want to say he's a mentor because he's a friend, but he is someone I can talk about what I'm doing, and he talks about what he's doing too. So it's a balanced thing.
I think that you are the first of 29 directors who is English. And before you say, Lynn Ramsey's Scottish, different. I introduced you as an English riposte. This Englishness that follows you around, do you recognise it? What do you think can you describe it, define it?
Well, no, I feel a bit more Italian at the moment because I've just done this. And I've never felt, I'm sure a lot of people can say this, but I've never felt I belong anywhere in a way. So I don't have this sort of national pride that some people might have. So I'm not saying I deny my Englishness, but I don't completely embrace it. And I'm interested in so many other cultures and other peoples. And yeah.
Who do you think should direct what will be the 30th Miu Miu Woman's Tale?
I wonder if they know already. I mean, the tricky thing about that question is that I've got so many female filmmaker friends. I don't want to upset anybody. So I don't know if this is cheating, but if she was still around, I would have loved to have seen a Chantal Akerman Miu Miu film. If she would have agreed to do it, she probably wouldn't have agreed, actually.
It's fascinating. Well, obviously we could go on a lot longer, but I think that's a very good point to pause and repair to the bar. Before we do, I just want to make sure that you all know where you can see all of these films that we've been discussing, which is on the Miu Miu Club page of miumiu.com, and that's by directors such as Chaim Abbas, Lucrezia Martel, Janixa Bravo. There's loads and loads of them. You've got to see them all. But now it only remains for all of us to thank the extremely generous and fascinating director of Miu Miu Women's Tales number 29, Joanna Hogg.